don't forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack making backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the Vato speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the Bay.
Judge Kasarik was attacked right here on her driveway as she was coming home from a football game on Friday night. The Austin American-Statesman reports that someone put a garbage can or a bag in the middle of the driveway, forcing her car to stop. You can still see the skid marks and shattered glass. That's when someone came out of the darkness and started firing at her.
A man arrested in Houston is being questioned in the attack on an Austin judge. Just hours after that man was charged with murder in Houston, Austin police confirm he is also a person of interest in the shooting attack on a Travis County State District judge.
Chimene Onyeri is being questioned about the attack, but just hours ago he was also charged with an unrelated murder. KXAN's Chris Sadeghi is live at Austin Police Headquarters. He has new information in this investigation. Chris?
Detectives from Austin have been in Houston since about 10 o'clock last night. Right now, Onyeri is only a person of interest, but those detectives are in Houston trying to get more information, see if they can connect him to the shooting of Judge Kasarik in any way. U.S. Marshals are also involved. Onyeri was picked up on an unrelated case, then this afternoon charged in the shooting death of a man at a Houston apartment back in May. Chief Art Acevedo would not comment about the Harris County case or the leads that led them to Onyeri, but we do know Onyeri does have a credit card fraud case pending in Kasarik's courtroom. And after being sentenced to 3 years probation in 2013, he recently was arrested for violating that probation. Houston detectives were seen at his father's home this afternoon, and his father claims Onyeri was at that home in Houston on Friday night when the shooting occurred.
He has been here, so he has nothing to do with that. If he is accused, I will get a lawyer. It is the lawyer who will find out whether that is true or false accusation.
We're not going to make any assumptions. We're not going to rest on our laurels, because we don't just want a person that might have fired the weapon. If there's a person that drove the car, we want to bring them to justice. If there's a person that was part of a conspiracy.
So Acevedo is not ruling out any possibilities about other people of interest. He also did say that they did receive calls for suspicious people in Kasarik's neighborhood. Now, coming up at 6 o'clock, we will have more about the connections Onyeri has with Kasarik's courtroom. That's coming up at 6 o'clock. For now, we're live at APD headquarters. Chris Sadeghi, KXAN News.
First at 5, new arrests reveal details in the plot to kill an Austin judge. A diabolical scheme to kill Travis County District Judge Julie Kasarik.
That's what federal law enforcement is saying about 3 men indicted today in connection with her shooting. Judge Kasarik was ambushed in her own driveway in the middle of the night on November of 2015. Kasarik shielded herself as best she could from a gunman who almost killed her. And now 3 men are finally facing punishment for that crime. KXAN crime reporter Leslie Rangel tells us about the larger scheme behind the shooting and how the men almost got away with it.
It was the most terrifying moment of my life. I did not know when the gunfire was going to stop. I thought I was going to die.
Judge Julie Kasarik in a previous interview with KXAN. Today, a federal grand jury indicted the original suspect, Chimene Onyeri, 24-year-old Rasul Kareem Scott of Louisiana, and 26-year-old Marcellus Antoine Bergen of Cypress, Texas. Thursday night, law enforcement officials confirm Bergen led Houston police, Austin police, and FBI officials on a high-speed chase through West Houston. The chase ended when he crashed his car into a metal pole. He ran away. Onyeri, however, remains in police custody, and Scott was arrested in New Orleans. According to court documents, all 3 men were involved in a multi-level fraud and racketeering plot involving mail fraud, bribery of a public official, wire and document fraud, money laundering, all leading up to a murder attempt. Officials say in one instance, a person from outside the country traveled to the U.S. to help teach them how to do their crimes. Documents go on to say their conspiracy to kill the Travis County judge came after Onyeri believed she was going to sentence him to prison for a previous fraud charge.
It wasn't my time for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm just thankful. Sometimes you can't ask why, you just accept it, and that's what I've done, and be thankful and be blessed.
Judge Kosurik has now recovered and is back in her courtroom. Now it's time for the people behind these crimes to face the justice system. In Austin, Leslie Rangel, KXAN News.
The FBI is still looking for the suspect, Marcelius Bergen. He's considered armed and dangerous. Officials are offering a reward for any information that leads to his arrest.
We have spent the day digging into the backgrounds of these suspects. KXAN first reported Chimene Onyeri's criminal conviction history after his arrest in May, which includes possession of marijuana and evading arrest charges in 2007. Those are out of Houston. In 2012, he was sentenced to probation in Judge Julie Kosurik's court in Travis County for ID theft and credit card fraud. But according to court records, in 2015, he violated the terms of his probation when he went to Louisiana and allegedly committed several crimes, including ID theft, credit card fraud, and racketeering. Judge Kosurik revoked his probation and, as Leslie mentioned, was going to send him to prison.
Yo, we back. It's your boy Popalot. Mobb. We on our way to Texas with it. H-Town to be exact. Oh my guys from Houston, y'all get in the comment box. Y'all flood that bitch. Matter of fact, we know we need to hold Texas down there. Y'all let us know what part of the state y'all repping. Now, today, I have one of the wildest, one of the craziest stories that I have come across since doing this mob tie shit. Now, a lot of times you'll have hitters. A lot of times you'll have scammers. Every once in a while, we'll get a rapper that comes across here. But in this episode, I'm going to bring you guys all three and even more, because this was a large-scale player in the Houston area. And I'm talking about none other than Chimene Onyeri. And I'm going to go ahead and go on the record to say that I'm going to call him Chi, because I don't want to mess up bro name. But it's going to get wicked in Houston. Now, breaking down this case, what was amazing to me was the amount of roles that Chi was able to cover. Now, the story is going to begin right in around the mid to early 2010, so like right around 2012 or so. By all accounts, Chi was a big player in the fraud game. And when I say the fraud game, it's many levels of the fraud game, and he was adept at a lot of these ways, and it spanned from a multitude of using stolen debit cards, and he would have skimming devices, he would do stolen identity refund fraud, he would do U.S. mail fraud, just so many different schemes that he came with. The first one, and I'm really going to highlight the ones that kind of led to him and everything that happened with the judge. Now, the first incident that I seen that was big on the radar was he was in a SUV or a van, and it looked like it was in some shopping center, and I'm going to say it was in Texas, because I'm really not 100% sure with the cities, because he was playing in so many different cities, and it even spans down to Louisiana, which involves another incident that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But the first incident that I seen, like I said, was in Texas somewhere. And apparently somehow a SUV had been brought to the attention of police. And it looked like broad day because, you know, they had dash cam footage. Now, based on a report that I saw from the arresting officer in that case, he's going to say that the truck was a rental, and it was Chi and another individual in the vehicle. And it looked like Chi was actually the passenger. And he's going to say that the person that the rental car's name was in was not in the vehicle. But he said something that kind of like made my ears perk up. And that's something I'm like, damn, do all cops think like that? He's saying that usually in a cop situation involving like a traffic stop or something like that, he's saying if the cop feels uncomfortable and the suspect looks uncomfortable, then something uncomfortable is going on, which led them to search the vehicle. And in the process of searching said vehicle, they found upwards of 70 gift cards. In my mind, I'm saying it's 77 gift cards that they found, and it was to a multitude of different retailers. And they would go on to learn that those credit cards had been obtained fraudulently. Now, that would lead to Chi receiving a charge. But in the process of receiving that charge, I want to say that he had his sentence adjudicated. Now, anybody that's familiar with law, y'all get in the comment box, because I'm not really sure kind of what that means. I don't know if they held it over his head. But that was a very, very, very important thing, because that would come back to haunt him, because he wasn't the type of individual to just kind of stand pat, because from jail for that sentence, he would be recorded calling home saying that he was on to a bigger and better scheme. And it was there where he would move on to income tax fraud. And it was said that he had people that worked in certain businesses. One that was like a juvenile detention center that had juvenile records as well as their social security numbers. And he was able to obtain that information and then use that and somehow file false income tax returns in these people's name. Now, he had an issue there because he was able to file the income tax returns, but he did not have a place to receive these checks, because it would have been very suspicious had he received all of these income tax checks at one address. So him being a mastermind like he is led him to befriend a network of mail carriers that work for the U.S. Postal Service, where he would end up being heard on tape trying to make a deal with a supposed mail carrier, but that turned out to be an undercover postal inspector. Now, he was lucky in that case because he was making money with that scheme, but he was not prosecuted. They did not even bring up any charges on him. So he flew under the radar in that case. But it would lead to a 2 a.m. night at a Walmart in Louisiana, which would eventually lead to his downfall. And it's going to show you how one small mistake can cost you everything. Now, in Louisiana at the time, there had been a series of large fraud purchases that had been going down at Walmarts, and particularly almost in the graveyard shift or the wee hours of the night, where they had a lady clad, dressed in a burqa. And from what I seen, you couldn't see nothing but her eyes. And I seen in one, like, of the pictures, she had like a designer bag, but she would go on into Walmart and she would make purchases upwards to like $15,000 in and around that area, purchasing electronics. Now, on one of those trips, authorities would happen to be called because Walmart happened to form a special unit that they would say that they would track suspicious purchases. And I don't know if it was the amount of money that was spent during this purchase, or I don't know if it was the 2 a.m. time that she was at the Walmart, because they said the Walmart was pretty much dead, or if it was her dressed in the burqa where they couldn't see any of her identity, that prompted them to call police. But police would arrive to the Walmart and they would go on to question the woman, as well as question a man that was sitting outside parked in an SUV. And one of the only reasons they was able to question that man in the SUV that would end up being Chi was because he was parked in a handicapped parking spot. Now, it was 2 a.m. in the morning, and the police going to say that it was suspicious to them that all of the parking spaces was open but they happened to park right there at that handicap parking. Anybody been to Walmart? I'm sure all of you have. You guys know that handicap parking is right in the front of the store. So he probably parked because he knew he was getting a big load. He didn't want to have her push the shopping cart too far. But on this occasion, it would lead to him being ticketed for parking in that handicap spot, because just him being in there, that would force him to conceal his identity to the police as well as the female that was in the car. And that would come back to haunt him, because he would eventually be indicted on some kind of charges associated with that. And that would lead him to a courtroom where he would have to face Judge Julie Kasorik. Now, Chi, presumably thinking 10 steps ahead, he's under the impression that Judge Kasorik would go on to avoid that previous conviction that he got that adjudication on. And in his mind, it was better for him to eliminate her than to deal with that court case. I guess not knowing that they're just going to appoint another judge to that case. But I don't know if it was something about that specific judge and him, or if this was just how he was rocking. But it seemed like he was an all chips to the table kind of guy. And that led to an ambush on the judge. Now, doing my research, I noticed that this was not a normal fraud situation, because they were looking to charge him with running a continuing criminal enterprise. Now, based on testimony, when the existence of that criminal enterprise was threatened, they're going to say that she responded with violence. And on the night of November the 6th, 2015, he would go on to attempt to murder State District Court Judge Julie Kasorik. He would go on to shoot the judge in front of her son. Miraculously, she made it, and the only reason she made it was they depicted that he had these like hollow tips or something like that, the bullets that explode. But when they hit the window, they kind of opened up, or they spread it. And it's almost like the equivalent of her getting hit with a shotgun, because it's like pellets. It broke into little parts. Even though she would go on to have a lot of those wounds be infected, and then she would have to take like 20 surgeries or something like that. But miraculously, she survived. And it's unknowingly how they identified Chi as the prime suspect, but he would go on to be identified as the prime suspect. And they would go on to charge him with that murder. But in the process of charging him with that murder, it would be brought up that he was also a high-profile suspect in two other murders, one that occurred in 2008 in an apartment complex in Southwest Houston, and it was the murder of a guy by the name of Kenneth Brooks. And they're going to say that he was killed because supposedly he had robbed Chi in a dice game the previous night. Now, they would go on to charge him with murder, but the Harris County prosecutor would later abandon the case. Instead, they would look to put him on trial for an unrelated case of aggravated robbery, in which a jury would go on to acquit him. Now, the prosecutor would go on to call Chi a cold-blooded killer, and then they would get into a May 2015 fatal shooting where FBI agent Daniel Burst would testify that 6 people had stated that they heard directly from Chi that he had shot a gentleman by the name of Jacoby Alexander at a Southwest Houston apartment complex. Now, the shooting was prompted by a car wreck that happened a day earlier involving Chi's father and a woman outside of a convenience store. Now, the woman would go on to tell police that Onyeri's father made sexual remarks towards her inside of the store, and then he prevented her from driving off. Now, Alexander, who was 29 at the time, intervened, and it said that he assaulted Chi's father. And Chi's father would happen to go to the hospital with a broken jaw as well as other injuries. Now, witnesses would go on to say that Chi would go to said convenience store the very next day and learn that it was Jacoby Alexander who had attacked his father. Now, Houston police would go on to charge Chi with murder, But the prosecutors would drop that charge so prosecutors in Louisiana could proceed with the fraud case that they had on him for the situation with the female in the handicapped parking spot at Walmart. Now, he would go on to be convicted and sentenced to life in federal court for the racketeering charges as well as the attempt murder on the judge. But this is definitely by far one of the craziest stories I ever seen. It's rare that we tackle somebody that is involved in murders as well as scamming, as well as a multitude of different things that he was doing, or the levels of scamming that he was doing. But y'all know what it is with me, man. It's your boy Popalot, man. POP_A_LOT. You know we gonna be back with some more of this real trill spill shit. And y'all hit the subscribe button right under me so y'all know when this trill shit is dropping. And shout out to my subscriber, man, Official DJ Will, the engineer, on Instagram. He's the one that brought this story to me. I wanted to get with him to try to get a little bit more insight, but you know how we do over here. Mobb types me on production mode. We gonna be back. Like I said, man, y'all get at me, man. Y'all tweet me, y'all tag me, y'all call me, y'all email me, y'all CC me, y'all text me. Y'all stop me in the street, however y'all want to do it, man. Y'all let me know where we need to go, what gangsters we need to cover, what we missed, what we got wrong, all of that, man. It's your boy Popalot. I'm gone. Mobb.